What's up, Laker fans? Tonight's the night, opening night. You're listening to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius. Indeed, the Lakers try to snap their 7-game losing streak on opening night tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's right. The last time Lakers won on opening night, Timofey Mozgov was the starting center on the team. But before we get to that, D, there are a couple of loose ends since we haven't potted since Thursday. Of course, that's the night where Dalton Knecht goes crazy. That was one of my favorite games of his prior to him going nuts. Quincy Oliveri, a great story, earns a 2-way contract. Lakers let go of Colin Castleton. Lakers roster is set. Just wondering if you have any final thoughts on kind of where the roster settled at.
So the Oliveri move was a move that we had been talking about behind the scenes for a while now. And the Lakers were carrying 3 bigs, essentially, in their 3 two-way spots. Koloko and Castleton, and then Traore. Traore is an interesting player, and I can understand wanting to see if they have something with him long term. And Castleton seemed like the odd guy out, even though I thought the last stretch of the summer league and then through the preseason, I actually thought that was some of the better basketball that Castleton had played for the Lakers. And so in a way, it's a shame that they had to let him go in order to bring Oliveri on. But I'm super intrigued by a player like Oliveri, honestly, a really good offensive skill set and a guy who plays with a bunch of motor. The archetype of a player, too, is like a small, fast guy, which the Lakers had in Dennis Schroeder, and a skill set that you kind of like to have around just to see if it blossoms into a guy that could be an end of a rotation player. And honestly, for the vibes alone, like an end of bench player, just because he seems like a really good kid and someone who has his head in the right place and his focus towards being the best player in person that he can be. And I think that matters within the construct of a team and a locker room and everything that goes with it.
Super happy for him. And yeah, what you said about just his personality and the energy that he brings really matters a lot. And beyond that, I think if Koloko gets cleared, I think this is the best group of two-ways the Lakers have had in a long time. We've been lamenting the back of the roster, that 11 through 15, who certainly got their butts kicked up in Golden State, and just sort of the lack of readiness. Like, if we have to throw these guys into an NBA game, what are we going to do? I actually feel more confident about all 3 of our 3-ways than I feel about the back 3 guys on the Lakers roster in terms of readiness to play in an NBA game. And I think that's important, D. I think that's part of the value of 2-way contracts. It's like, to me, the value of those guys are they're either somebody where it's raw talent that you want to develop, right? Get into your program, and hopefully 2 years from now, they're, able to contribute in a rotation or something like that. Or I think it's the type of guys where they're able to step in and like at least hold their own, right, in an NBA game if called upon in an emergency. Last year, there was a game against Philadelphia. We were at Philly where we had to put JHS in, and I think we had to put Lewis in at one point. We lose that game by like 40, 45 points. Oliveri, Traore can really defend and get out on the perimeter, sprints. I've loved Traore's minutes. And then Koloko is that defensive big. And that to me is the distinguisher between him and Castleton, is just the defensive end. Like, what do you need? It's not anything Castleton did wrong per se, right? It's just the nature of his game is more ball skills, initiating offense, good passer, right? And contributes what he can on the defensive end, but isn't particularly big. Didn't block a single shot in 16 appearances last year, which is a hard thing to say about a 5. And so it's just like, what do the Lakers need at that spot? And so I think to be able to have 3 two-ways. Now we'll see. We'll see what the actual basketball proves, but I'm more confident in those 3 sticking them in a game than Bronny, JHS, or Lewis. And so I think that helps bridge the gap a little bit.
It does. It does. Here's hoping none of them have to play.
Yes.
In the big picture, which I think is a good place to transition to opening night and the beginning of the season and the roster being set. Minnesota, they made some changes over the offseason. They traded one of their pillar players, one of their foundational players in Karl-Anthony Towns, and they traded him for old friend Julius Randle. It was funny. You sent us that clip that was on Twitter of the last time the Lakers won an opening night game. And you mentioned Timofey Mozgov, but in reality, a lot of the clips that you sent me were clips of D'Angelo Russell, who is starting point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers, and Julius Randle. So someone's going to get another win on opening night between those two. We did not see Randle in the game that the Lakers played against Minnesota to open the preseason, but Randle is a big, physical, bruising forward, a forward in the classic sense, and in the modern sense as well. Like, he is a perimeter-based forward who loves to go to the paint, and he can shoot jumpers, and he's a tricky matchup. I'm intrigued, though, by Minnesota and what they could do, but also how this specific Lakers team matches up with them and what that means, because there's a lot of interesting matchups, a lot of, I think, matchups that favor both, not a lot that favor both sides. I think Minnesota has a few that favor them for sure, but the Lakers have interesting dudes that I think Minnesota's going to have trouble defending, honestly. And so where are you at, and where would you like to start? Lakers on offense, Lakers on defense, talk Minnesota a little bit more. Where are you at?
Let's start on the defensive end. There's certainly the first question when I opened my eyes this morning was, who the hell guards Anthony Edwards tonight? And I think that, when we played them in the play-in a couple years ago, and during that stretch after the All-Star break when we just traded for D'Lo, Vando, and all them, we had a couple games against them where the games really turned on defensive runs. There was like a massive 20-0 run or something like that in Minnesota. And then at home in that play-in game, we held Ant to like, I don't know the box score, but like 3 for 16. It was really bad numbers. And a big part of that was the athletic size of Vando combining with AD. It's always interesting when a player that's hyper athletic like Ant runs into a team that can handle that. It's sort of like, oh, I'm used to winning in this way. Like the ways that I'm used to getting victories, they can hang with me collectively between Vando and AD, especially. And then, the other talent around jumping passing lanes and things like that. But Lakers don't have that tonight. They don't have the guy that can can't put Rui on him. Austin is small, but I suspect he's the guy that's going to draw the assignment. And so who do you think matches up with him? And then secondly, whoever it is not going to be an ideal matchup for Ant. What needs to happen around them? What kind of help does that defender need?
Yeah, the Lakers don't have a good answer all night, even off of the bench. So it is going to be Austin. Austin's a smart defensive player. He's a crafty defensive player. He's a worker defensively. And so he's going to be a barrier for Anthony Edwards. How high of a barrier to clear is a whole different question. Right. And so, but Austin's going to try to stay connected, and I think he's going to be there. He's going to contest shots. So I think Austin's going to do his job. Around Austin, I think the things that you need to do are to show help early. You need to make Ant's reads as high level as they can possibly be. Ant's been getting better in that area, but if there's a part of his game that has not caught up to the uber athleticism and the crazy shot making and just the ability to play with force and power, it's all right, where's all the help coming from? Have I over dribbled into help because it's like I didn't read it early enough? Is my passing angle too flat here? Where's the defense Xing out behind me and all of that stuff? Again, I think that he's going to be better at that this year, and that teams who try to prey too much on that decision making are going to be in trouble because of it. But the athleticism the Lakers can offer on the back line in terms of size and smarts with AD and LeBron, and then even with Rui to a certain degree, I think that that's where they can make their hay, and those guys are going to have to be on top of it as rotators and just showing that second and third line of help.
Julius is a guy that you've always mentioned. You like how Rui defends him, for example. Like that's a matchup that, can possibly work out there. My concern about making the reads more complicated on Ant is I don't think we can put a ton of pressure on him, right? Because he's just going to body and bully the defenders that we have. Whereas if it's Vando, yeah, he can get up on him. He's not going to physically bully Vando the way that he can to other players.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that I think that this is also a game where the Lakers are going to need to play at the level of the ball. And it's interesting.
Meaning AD at this level of the screen?
Yes, meaning AD at the level of the screen when he's defending Gobert, especially. And so let's go to break here, Pete, because there are iterations of this that I think is where the game can and probably will turn. So in a matchup space game, Pete, I think that AD is going to have to be on Gobert and that LeBron is going to be on McDaniels and that Rui is going to be on Julius. And so out of those three players, Julius is the biggest threat offensively. And he's the one that you're going to have to help off of in the ways where your recovery has to be as smart as possible, right? Because Randall will attack a closeout and he's a viable scorer. But when Ant has the ball and he's in pick and roll with Gobert, I think the Lakers have to show the pressure there with a second defender. You're talking about the Lakers don't have that individual defender that's going to pressure him. But if they bring a second defender into the fold, particularly when it's Gobert who is in the screening action, I think that they have to make Gobert play in the short role and that they have to make Gobert be a decision maker. And then they have to rotate behind that. And that's where I look at like LeBron, for example, being a guy who is going to have to be the guy who's rushing up to take Gobert in the pocket, or even Rui, and then LeBron rotating to Julius and the chain being sharp. And I think that if you let Ant be a bully at the point of attack and single coverage, you are then putting it in the hands of the basketball gods and Edwards missing shots or not. And to me, I don't want to play that specific game tonight, if that makes sense.
I don't want to play that either, but I think we might have to. My concern with extending AD is that if you look at the size behind that, right? So if AD showing up around, say, the top of the circle or something like that, you've got LeBron rotating on the back line, but between McDaniels and Julius especially, I really think just the nature of this matchup tonight is this is one of the most physical teams in the league, and the Lakers have been one of the skinnier teams in the league for a minute. Now, I think they've improved that relative to previous seasons, especially with Connect and Max and playing two big lineups, rather than kind of smaller guards at those 2-3 spots. However, I still think there's a fairly big distinction. The Wolves, as you said, didn't have Julius in the first preseason game, but the Lakers didn't have AD or LeBron. And I think that you really hit it home with LeBron being an important help defender, because I do think that McDaniels is the guy to, now he can knock that shot down, of course, those threes that rotate to him. But I think that there is going to be a certain amount of strategy from Minnesota where it's like jailbreak on the rim. And if we can get Ant, even Gobert, right? Any of those guys around the basket, the collective size, even if you miss, you can follow it up with a superior athlete getting a putback type of thing. And so what I saw in that first game, preseason game, was very much that containment. We're going to go way under screens, just try to keep you in front of us type of thing. And so I wonder if that's the route that JJ goes. And I totally get your leaving it to the basketball god standpoint. I'm just worried if we get too extended against a team that really wants to attack the paint, we kind of play into their hands.
No, I think that that's a totally good counter point to the point that I was making. And it's one of the reasons why Minnesota is going to be a very challenging team to deal with this season, is because they can overwhelm you. And I did just get nightmarish flashbacks of Lakers guards trying to box out Luka Garza, for example, yes, during that preseason game. And that did not go well for the Lakers. And of anything that Gobert can do, he can do that. He will roll and he will be physical and he's tall and he's going to eat on the offensive glass, and he is going to get putbacks and he is going to draw fouls, and drawing fouls is also where Minnesota can then start to gain advantage as well, because then it's Edwards getting to the foul line, or even guys like Mike Conley picking up little fouls. And then it's just like, okay, well, you're sending a guy who shoots 85% to the free throw line. And so very challenging to defend them when you do not have your best defensive player for their best player. Two ideas I want to throw out to you. Is this a too big game? And how do you see Max's role for this specific game, considering some of the defensive limitations the Lakers have, and him being one of their better wing defenders on the team at all, but particularly without Vando.
Yes, I do think this is a too big game, although I think the minutes without Gobert will be more suited for that. Because when you play the two bigs, especially if the second big is Jackson, there's a certain amount of, we know two of y'all are going to go to the basket, and maybe a certain amount of concession for AD jumpers. So that's going to be a thing, I think, D, tonight, where if AD's jumper is going, I think that pick and pop is going to be available if he wants it. If he's hitting that, I think the Lakers can be in some good shape. And then with respect to Max's biggest weakness on defense right now is people can go through him. And so that worries me a little bit with Ant and sort of the more physical type of guys. And part of the reason why I like him on smaller type of guys. And so I don't think he's a great matchup for Ant. But again, we don't have the personnel. We were talking about this last night just in the thread, right? About like, there's a lot of guys on the Lakers that you can sort of go after individually, which is why I could kick a question back to you. Is this a zone defense game too, within the questions that you asked?
It could definitely be a zone defense game. I'm worried about playing too much zone against Minnesota's bench when they start to bring in their shooters.
For sure.
And so when you were saying it's a too big group, but when Gobert is out of the game, I'll be interested to see if it's a too big look whenever Naz Reid is not in the game.
For what reason?
Because Reid is the guy who is going to stretch you out, and I don't trust Hayes to defend him. And so Hayes will need to be around the basket. And to me, Julius is the type of player who is going to give Hayes specific issues.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so if Finch goes to the type of three sort of like big man rotation of, oh, all right, well, the three bigs we're going to play are Gobert, Randall, and Reid, then it's those bench groups where it's just like, oh, okay, AD, you're going to defend Randall, but then that means, Jackson, you get to defend Naz Reid. And I don't like that at all. And so it's a tricky thing. Like, I get it. And so will zone be an answer there? Potentially. One of the reasons why I think this is a Max game is because I think Max is a pretty good player against the Alexander Walkers, and DiVincenzo, as like a guy who is just like, okay, you're a good shooter, but Max can track those guys fairly well. And he's got good length and he's got high hands. And Max did a pretty good job of defending Dante when they played in New York last season. It was actually one of his better individual defensive performances, not necessarily against DiVincenzo, but it's just like, that was one of the games where I remember thinking, this is why Max Christie should play more. Not because he's making every play at a high level, but just because he's showing a competency against this level of guard. And so I do think it's an important Max game as a defensive wing against any of Minnesota's wing players not named Ant. I actually think that this is a game where you do sort of sacrifice Austin at the altar of Anthony Edwards and basically just be like, you got to work your ass off against this dude because you're the guy who is going to be crafty enough to like chase and be in position, and Austin stands in there a little bit better than Max when he's really engaged, because Max is still a like, I'm not gonna foul dude, and Austin traditionally has been the guy that's been like, okay, well, elbow me in the face then if you have to, because I'm gonna be there in order to challenge you. And so if that impacts Austin's offense, like, I get it, but the flip side of that is, I think this is the game where we really need Austin to be like, this is a playoff game level defensive intensity, and I've got to lock into my assignment. And my assignment is one of the 7 to 10 best players in the league sort of idea, or at least a guy who's ascending to that level, right? And I've got to go out there and compete.
And the biggest part of his job tonight will be following the game plan.
Yep.
We can debate and discuss like what will they do, but I'm fairly certain that Redick won't leave Austin alone on an island on Edwards. And so whatever, if it's like, hey, in this situation, we're doing this, in that situation, we're doing that, that's a big part of a defender's responsibilities. Just follow that, because we got a game plan for it, where if you're not supposed to let a guy go middle and you do, everybody else is scrambling after that.
And that's actually what I expect, Pete. I expect there to be a very refined, like we're icing high pick and or side pick and rolls. We're icing those. Like we're sending you sideline. Like we're not trying to let you get middle. We want to try to play the pick and pop. And when it's Naz Reid who's setting the screen, we are going to peel switch on that. And when it's Gobert, we're going to hold the line and let him play in the pocket as much as possible with the back line. And there will be sharper, like, this is the scheme and you need to execute it. So let's go to break here, Pete. And when we come back, we've talked enough about how Minnesota is going to be hard to guard. I think the Lakers can be hard to guard tonight, but Minnesota is one of the best defenses in the league, and we got to try to figure this out. Pete, you mentioned this as not a throwaway comment earlier, but you mentioned AD's pick and pop jumper. I think that the preseason showed AD is like, I'm listening. You want me to shoot the jumper? I did this for the first 8 or 9 years of my career. I was a dude that felt super comfortable shooting the jump shot. The last 2 or 3 seasons, that's waned. He looks to be more like the dude who the Lakers traded for in terms of how comfortable he has been. AD is also often put on his I'm a jump shooter hat when he's played against this specific defensive player in Rudy Gobert. Talk to me about the Lakers offense through the framework of Anthony Davis being a jump shooter and how much that matters this game.
Yes. So Gobert's going to lock down the paint, right? That's something that he's not the most versatile defender in the league, but he has the DPOYs because he's probably the best drop coverage defender in the league. And so the Lakers are going to see a lot of that. And as a result, I think we'll see more LeBron at point guard and more LeBron and AD pick and rolls. I think that, McDaniels will likely be on LeBron. And so that gets McDaniels off of D'Lo. So I do wonder if I think there's going to be some degree of like D'Lo and AD and LeBron and AD, but AD is sort of the centerpiece within that. And then, like when he's gone against Gobert, he makes him dance. That's the advantage that AD has over him is a foot speed thing. And so that's typically, he turns on the Jets, which he doesn't always do from a foot speed perspective. Sometimes he's that bigger power player. But I think that in this particular game, there was a game last year that we ended up losing in Minnesota, but AD was just killing Gobert in the first quarter with like 15 points. And it was a lot of like drive one way, spin middle, fade away, hit the little 5-footer, that he likes to take over while drifting left. And that sort of like getting him dancing, I think is the is sort of the central key of that. And so I think it's going to be a mix of like that ISO and then a lot more ball screens. What do you see on that front?
I think that there's going to be a fair amount of ball screens. I also think that there's going to be a fair amount of like ball reversal playing through the top of the key DHO actions, and AD is going to be running a fair amount of keeper action tonight is what I envision happening. That get a guy to dance doesn't always happen with like catching, holding, jab step. It happens with like a lot of movement and even AD starting with a live dribble. So on the trail, dribbling right into a DHO potential option or dribbling right into an isolation and saying, where are you? Oh, you're laying off? I'm going to shoot this pull-up 3, or I'm even going to shoot the 16, 18-footer that I feel more than comfortable taking and making because like I'm in a rhythm. I think it's super important that AD establishes the rhythm with his jumper early. And for the Lakers standpoint, I think it's super important that a couple of those early jumpers go in. Mm-hmm. Gobert has always seemed like a player who believes the threat. There's like a thing in chess. When top players are playing against other top players, they start to maneuver their pieces in a way where they are setting up the threat. And then they make a move, and the guy who is on the other side of the board, he has to decide, do I believe you? Do I believe that this threat is real? Because if I don't, then I'm going to counterattack, and I'm going to rely on the fact that I have enough defensive resources in my back pocket in order to thwart this thing that you're doing. But it's hard, man. When you're playing another great player and they start to like push those pawns and you're like, well, damn, do I have time here in order to counterattack, or do I need to go on the defensive now? Gobert always seems to believe AD. Like, oh, you're going to step into this jumper? Like, I believe it. And I believe that you're a threat at all of these locations on the court. And so if Gobert comes out believing AD, that's going to set up all of that off the dribble stuff that you're talking about. But sometimes it does take one of those jumpers to fall early to make sure that the defense actually does believe you the way that. So I think it's going to be important for AD to be like, hey, my first jumper, it went in. Now what do you do? Do I start to have you on tilt earlier within the game because this is already working for me?
Another aspect of the Lakers offense versus Minnesota defense matchup is the level of ball denial that they play, and how they do that against D'Lo and Austin and Dalton and Max off of the ball. I think that Max and Dalton are going to be especially important in this type of game because that can be something that's difficult for D'Lo and Austin to beat, but Max and Connect's ability to sort of put pressure on the rim as a counter to that is super important. And so that you'll see, if it's working out poorly for the Lakers, you'll see a lot of the Lakers' wing catches be pushed out toward half court. And if it's working well for the Lakers, you'll see counters to that. For example, we've run a couple sideline fast breaks with D'Lo and Max where they zip up the left sideline and it's a dribble at, which is sort of a cue from the ball handler to the other guy to, I want you to cut. That's a way of communicating between players. Max has backdoored that. D'Lo's been right on it with the bounce pass and it's gotten Max a dunk at the rim or drawn fouls. And so that sort of, you have to attack attackers. They have a very attacking style of defense, which you can have when you've got big physical athletes. We saw this with the 2020 Lakers. You can really get up in guys' jerseys. And so how the Lakers manage that, what do you see kind of is on the table for the Lakers to handle that?
I think this is a super important pressure release game. And I think the Lakers need to understand who their pressure release guys are and make sure to involve them early in plays. So, for example, I think that both D'Lo and Austin are going to face a lot of like 94 feet or three-quarter court ball pressure. I think LeBron will face this too, honestly, which is one of the reasons why, even if this does become a LeBron at point guard game, I think giving him the ball in the backcourt could be tricky because I think Minnesota's going to pressure him and try to turn him a fair amount of times. An important aspect of this to me is that the Lakers pressure release guys cannot be the dudes who are being defended by Edwards and McDaniels, because that's how those catches get pushed out further and further and further.
How do teams pressure release? Like, what does that mean?
So say the ball is inbound to D'Angelo Russell and it's Rui who inbounds to D'Lo, right? And D'Lo's dribbling up the court and McDaniels or Edwards or any of their ball pressure guys, Alexander Walker, is defending him. What I'm looking for are when the Lakers bigs especially are in the front court, that they are leveraging the idea that like their defender isn't going to want to chase them all of the way out and basically just jump into open space and present themselves as an option in order to receive a pass. And then for that hit ahead pass to come. Because one of the problems that I see with Minnesota's ball denial against both Austin and D'Lo, but this is especially true against D'Lo, I think, is that D'Lo is not a good accelerating player off of a full stop. So as if he doesn't create separation initially, he's not going to create it at all. And so one of the things I want to see from D'Lo is to pass on the move to a pressure release and have that flow right into him running already, because I'm already running.
Right.
And so this is where his ball entries, and because that's when he can like sort of juke one way and go the other and open himself up on cuts in order to get to the basket. But I also just think in general, man, the Lakers need to screen effectively this game. This, to me, this is like a big, like, are you setting good screens game? And also read it early, man. If these guys are top side on you, do not fight them. once you feel that they're top side, you're not a better athlete than them. You're not stronger than them. You're not bigger or longer than them. You need to get out. You need to get out of there, and you need to move on to the next progression. This can't be one of those games where D'Lo's trying to walk through a guy or shove him off in order to get back. The Lakers need to have option 2, option 3, option 4 in their pocket for this game in order to basically move on to their next progression. Because if their offense is reliant on this guard coming to get the ball on this specific play in order to move into the next phase of the thing, no, man, this isn't a relay race. I don't need to hand you the baton in order for the thing to continue. This is a flow sport. And if you cut me off and you cut my path off, I can't be the guy who's trying to walk through Jalen McDaniels.
Right.
In order to get all of the way that it's like, no, that's not going to work. You need the back cut and then replace, and all of that thing needs to work that way. And it needs to be timing, and it needs to be sharp, and they need to read it.
And that's tough when you're in the early stages of an offense, right? So I am skeptical on our ability to get to the third option. I think we can get to a second option on things. I think that in a couple months we'll be more into the third, fourth, and fifth. And so it's going to be a tough game tonight, D.
One more thing for you, Pete. One last question to end on. What's the X factor for the Lakers to actually win this game? If the Lakers were to win, where do you envision your eye gravitating to on the box score as a very important thing that would have happened in this game?
Maybe I'm just obsessed right now, but to me, it comes down to connect is the X factor in this game, in that he is the type of guy where it's like, oh, you want to ball pressure him with one of their bench guys? Like, I don't know how much Dillingham is going to play, but he got a back cut dunk on Dillingham ball denial the first time that we played them. And so that ability to hit shots on the perimeter, but also put pressure on the rim, if he can come out of the gates with a 15-point type of night, I think the Lakers will need sort of that third guy to emerge, not just from like Austin and D'Lo, but like a third physical scorer. So to me, that's either him or Rui are the two guys that can sort of like power their way at their particular positions to some buckets if they're also able to hit some threes. So how about you?
See, I'm going to go the other side of this, but I totally agree about connect, but I'm going to go to the other bench, and I'm going to say it's a combination to me of DiVincenzo's 3-point shooting, Naz Reid's 3-point shooting, and the overall who outscored who from beyond the arc. If DiVincenzo and or Reid have one of those nights where they're 6 for 8, if one of those dudes hits 5 threes, the Lakers are going to be in trouble. Meanwhile, if the Lakers can be the team that's just like, oh, the Lakers got up 35 threes and made 17 of them. If they went 16 for 40 from behind the arc, I think the Lakers are going to have a very good chance of winning. And if it's AD who makes a couple of those, I think that they're going to be in a very good position to basically win a game on offense versus a very good defensive team.
I think that's a great point about their 3-point shooting, especially between DiVincenzo and Reid, in that I think it's likely the Lakers play, again, a containment style, like we'll live with some jumpers to try to survive you not punishing us in the paint. And so it's not conceding threes necessarily, but they're certainly easier than the ones where you're facing ball denial and harder closeouts and things like that. So, all right. Opening night tonight, excited about that. Good luck to JJ Redick in his first NBA game, and the Lakers hopefully can snap that 7-game losing streak on opening night. Either way, we'll be back tomorrow to discuss. But until then, you've been listening to the Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn his double team. Just pass out in front, broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic, got it. Magic fires again. They will. Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds. Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move.
2, 1.
Listen.
Bryant.
Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over.
line. Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry. Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.